Hello everyone and welcome again to my channel. Today I'm going to continue my attempts on finishing the Churchill tank. Let's start with a little overview of what's in this episode. I will place some cool decals. I will make sketches in 4 different colors. Somebody will say hello. I will make the tank box dirty. Then it will get even worse. And I will come to this end. But first things first, let's start with an airbrush painting. As you see, I have already put the primer on the model. I have decided to use the black color instead of standard gray. As Churchill has lots of niches and recesses, the black primer will help to build shadows and color variations. I will use 2 different tones of green to build color scheme of the tank. To make colors a little bit more vivid, I will use highly diluted Russian green as a strong highlight. This will help with toning effect of washes and pigments, which I plan to use in a later part of the process. I will also blend all colors with olive green to tone a bit highlights from Russian green. I must admit that Churchill already looks quite impressive, but the job is not done yet. I plan to add some usage, aging and weathering effects in order to put a tank into the scene of Tunis 1943. I was really carefully watching photos from that time and place, and my conclusion is this. Apart from sand, I have to also add dried earth tones and bits of vegetation, which is pulled in by tracks under the fenders. Before the weathering process, I always cover the whole model with a gloss or at least satin varnish. It will protect your previous paintwork and also give a good working base for distributing and blending of washes and oil paints. Okay, let's start with decals. As I have told you before, Churchill Mk.III is being built as a representative of 31st Royal Tank Regiment stationing in Tunis in March of 1943. And one of the particular reasons why I have chosen this variant is the set of decals which will be eye-catching on a finished model. While placing decals, I mostly use Mr. Mark Softer Neo from Mr. Hobby, which I also use as a setter for decals. Sometimes, when decals are placed on an uneven surface, for example bends or recesses, I will use Mark Fit Super Strong as it will instantly soften decals. One word of advice though, use Mark Fit Super Strong carefully, as it is very easy to ruin decals. The substance is very strong and can even thin the paint underneath the decals if you don't use varnish. For chipping I have decided to use four colors. First, which will be used the most, is light green. I place it with the use of a torn piece of a sponge. Nearly every modeler has it in his workshop. You can find protective sponges in many modeling products you order. If you don't have one, you can also use a sponge used for cleaning the dishes. Light green chipping is being followed by black-gray chipping. From this now on, I will only use a small paintbrush to build the effects. The purpose of using the black-gray is to soften the effect of black chipping, which will be placed at the end, and also to build the base for silver effect, which will be used in just a second. As you look closely, you will see that I use silver chipping and dry brushing only for fenders, details, and welding areas. On the real tank in construction areas where the rolled steel is being used, you will not find silver steel or rust. My confession for this moment is that I tend to build my models which are rather tired and used with lots of dents. Dents, scratches, and damage details added. Sometimes I think that it is close to the edge, or even maybe over the edge, but well, you can judge this for your own. I like it that way. For blending and weathering, I mostly use oil paints. as they give the most freedom in obtaining the expected coloring results. Yes, they dry much slower than regular modeling washes, but at the same time, you can make endless corrections in order to make you ultimately happy with the result. I started the weathering process with placing random dots of different colors all over the model. It will differentiate the color scheme of the tank and make it more alive and real. It will also blend the colors, giving the tint of mist, which will be a great base for pigments representing sand residues. At the beginning, the model looks like a pox patient, but just after a few minutes you can see what is the point of this process. For blending, I use enamel odorless thinner from Ammo. Simply dip your brush in a thinner, dry it a bit by touching the tissue or the piece of kitchen towel, and then slowly blend the oil paint on the model. If there is too much of paint residue on the surface, just collect it with the paintbrush and wipe it into the tissue. If you took out too much, simply put the paint again. Now just repeat the process until you are happy with the result. There is another tip I would like to give you. For oil paints and washes, never use natural high-quality paint brushes, just like Kolinsky ones, as those types of paints will ruin them. Instead, use any kind of synthetic brushes. They are perfect for this type of works and are more resilient to heavy chemicals used along with those types of paints. After color blending, I have focused on niches and recesses which are quite common in this tank. I will use for this purpose two kinds of washes. First is dark brown, which will give us two effects. First, it will build shadows in recesses, and second, the residue of the paint can be used to blend it even more with present colors, building the effect of streaks or discoloration. If you look closely, you can see the difference between working with oil paints and modeling washes. Colors in here don't tend to follow the paintbrush. You can rather correct them than blend with other colors. Washes also tend to dry faster. Process of blending and cleaning the model is a process which you might repeat even 3 or 4 times until you finish. It is a standard procedure that after a set of blending or cleaning, you will have to wait for a model to dry. Colors will change and will look differently than at the time when you place paint at the tank. This is also the fact you need to take into consideration when planning the painting scheme. For the second layer of wash, I have chosen the Kursk Soil Wash. As this wash is rather thick, it will work nicely with pigments I plan to use for sand residue. I try to distribute this wash not only to cover niches and recesses, but also to build a light film over the previous layers of paint to give a light representation of dust covering the tank. The last weathering effect I have used at the model was a pigment residue. I put two kinds of pigments. Most of the time it will be the North Africa dust, but I will also occasionally use Europe earth to differentiate the pigment colors. Pigments are initially fixed on the model with the use of the thinner. Once I'm happy with the placement and structure, I use pigment fixer to tie it firmly with the surface. My son didn't believe me that I record this session. Well, I was. It is time for some last details. In this case I work on exhaust pipes which I wanted to make covered with rust. In order to do so I used dark grey paint which is a perfect base for rust and silver colors. For building the rust effect I covered the part with rusty colored wash, any kind of brown will do, and then I place randomly different colors of rust pigments to the part. I blend them together at the edges to obtain the smooth transition of colors. In the end, I cleaned the part from remaining residue in places where it's not supposed to be. It is very important to do this just after you finishing working with pigments. After a few hours, you might have some problems with cleaning the surface as pigments are drying fast and strong. Now we are getting close to the end of painting process. The last step is to protect your work with the varnish. This time I will use matte varnish, which I will use not on the whole model, but just at the selected parts to reduce the glossiness of the surface. Be careful to use matte varnish with pigments. If you spray it directly on pigment residue, you will get a whitey foam surface, which will just look like a white mold. Blah. Okay, so we have arrived at the end of the build of a Churchill Mk.III tank. It is the end of the build process, but not the end of the story of Churchill tank. In the next episode, I will share with you my work on the figures and additional accessories for the tank. The aim is to get close as it can be to diorama effect without building the actual one. Sounds strange? Yeah, I know. If you want to know what kind of a crazy idea I have, stay tuned and visit me in the next episode. I will then assemble and paint figures and additional equipment for the tank. I will try to pull off this tank even more than I did now. And as always, if you like my video, give a thumb up and subscribe. Ciao!